see a lot of people from many different countries. You just heard the introduction made by Professor Kang, and thank you for a very kind introduction. This is my second time to come to this lecture. Actually, last year I did the same thing, but I can compare. This time we have more students than last year. And I will discuss this topic, but before I do that, I just went to Vietnam for a few days, and then I moved to China, Beijing, for a couple of days to discuss about the trade disputes between China and United States. Do you follow that kind of news? And it's creating a lot of uncertainties in this kind of world environment. But anyway, so we are living in a very, as far as international trade is concerned, we are living in a very, very important, very uncertain, very unpredictable kind of period. So I think as a student, you don't have to study international trade, but if you look at the news, if you look at the newspaper or CNN or some kind of TV news, you can follow what's going on. And also, I hope you can judge yourself what is wrong, what is right, why they are doing this kind of thing. You cannot provide the immediate solution, but this is very important topic. So as a person who studied international trade 40 years ago when I was a graduate student, but since then I'm in this field for many, many years. So I can say that I'm really interested in international trade. I don't know about you. I mean, you have many different interests, but what I'm saying is here, international trade issues at the moment in the world kind of environment is very important topics. I hope you can listen to my lecture, and I hope this will be helpful for your understanding of the world. Well, anyway, I have prepared a slide. The title is Korea's Trade Relations and Trade Policy. Since you are here studying in Korea, you may have interest in learning how Korea has developed. And we can talk about many different issues, but Korean economy has developed quite rapidly through many things, but through mainly international trade. So I want to introduce Korea's international trade performance so far. And then I will talk about international trade policy of Korea. And then I want to talk about briefly about current world trade environment, what's going on between US and China, and maybe I can conclude my lecture by introducing what kind of role Korea can play in this kind of very uncertain world trade environment. Okay. Before I start my lecture, I want to briefly explain what happened in Korea many, many years ago. I think you are very young enough, you don't really understand, 60 years ago, 50 years ago, what happened to Korea. But for me, I was born during the war, Korean War. Okay, so as you know, or you may not know, we had a war between North and South Korea. At that time, China was also involved, and US also involved. In any case, we had a war in 1950 to 1953. We are still in the war. We are not fighting each other, but this war didn't end because we still in an armistice kind of period. That's why these days North Korea and United States is talking about signing the agreement of ending the Korean War. It's very some kind of awkward to say this because we don't fight each other, but still Korean War, which broke in 1950, still remain, even though we are living in a peaceful kind of period. In any case, we have a war for 3 years. And then Korea was divided into North Korea and South Korea. And at that time, if you compare North and South, to some extent you can understand, even now, North Korea has a lot of natural resources, mineral resources, and lots of factories, industrial sites are in North Korea. On the other hand, South Korea is very peaceful farming area. Mostly we are producing rice and other agricultural products, and North Korea is doing more industrial activities. So once we are divided, South Korea has nothing. Only they are growing, agricultural products. And if you compare the population of North and South, South is much bigger. Even today, South Koreans are 50 million people, and North Korea is exactly half. So at that time, also we have more people, very poor. We don't have any industrial activities. So South Korea was really poor, and we depend on foreign aid because we are so poor. Some other countries are giving some donations to South Korea. So these are our main final resources. Using that, we can buy some other things from abroad. And one thing I can tell you is that, in terms of value of the dollar, which is changing hugely, but even at that time, Korea's per capita income was $80. $80 means each month you only have $7. But dollar was at that time is quite valuable than today, but still very, very poor. Some literature wrote that Korea was second poorest country in Asia. I don't know at that time which country is the most poor country in the world, but in Asia, but Korea was that poor. And one thing I would like to really emphasize is the last word. Korea was with no hope. Okay, this is not my writing. In the 1950s, late 1950s, U.S. government was helping Korea. So one of the reports of the State Department of the U.S. in the late 1950s, they write the report saying that South Korea seemed to be so poor, it may not have any hope for future. So they are recommending they reduce the amount of aid which is given to Korea, and you have to give this aid to other countries where they have some kind of hope for the future. So, after the war, Korea was regarded as a poor, very poor country, and even outsiders, they think that Korea will not have any future hope. That's the kind of status we are facing in late 1950s or right after the Korean War. So I don't want to spend too much time, but I will show you this picture. Can you see this picture, right? This is the, I don't know whether you visited our city hall area we call Cheongdaecheon. Nice stream, and many people are walking and surrounded by the buildings. That stream looked like this, 1950s, okay? Those are the houses people were living at that time, in that houses. And I sometimes give a lecture to government officials from developing countries, especially Southeast Asian countries. Some officials from Myanmar or Laos or even Vietnam are saying, we still have this kind of houses. And how can you fix this into the very nice area? So this is the picture I always want to show to foreigners, because I show many other pictures, but when they return their home, the picture they only remember is this. This is so, real. I mean, Korea was in that kind of poor situation in 1950s. Well, 60 years later, it's the statistics of 2017. Population still, 51 million. And here, did it work or not? Here, on the population, our Korean population is less than 1%, 0.7% of the world population. I'm not, what does 0.7% means? I'm not an expert on Korean wave or Korean song, Korean drama, but those people in Korea who study this kind of subject, they said miracle of 0.7%. In other words, we are a very small country in terms of population, but we are producing many singers and actors. We produce movies which are popular among the world community. Our total GDP is 1.5 trillion US dollars. It may be big, it may be small, but look at this world GDP is 80 trillion dollars. So Korea's size of the economy in the world economic situation is only 1.9%. So in other words, we are doing okay, but we cannot develop our economy by using only our domestic market. Domestic market is only 1.9%. So we have to do some international activities, mainly trade and investment. Otherwise, you cannot grow continuously. So this is 1.9% is very important figure to understand Korean economy. And per capita income, $29,000, but it looks good, but people living in Korea, we don't feel that much that we are really advanced countries, because our per capita GDP is around $20,000 for almost 20 years, more than 20 years. So it's very, very difficult to jump from $20,000 to $35,000 or $40,000 where you can claim you are advanced countries. But anyway, we are 29 countries. That's not that important. I want to emphasize once more, how about trade Korea is doing? It's almost $1 trillion, which is 2.9% of the world trade. So if you look at 1.9%, that's the size of the economy in the world, but 2.9% our trade is in the world trade. That means we are doing much more trade compared to our size of the economy. So we are quite, we are doing good performance in the area of international trade. Okay, these are the picture I talk about. You have to, if you don't visit this area, you have to visit this area. This is near City Hall, old town. We have a nice area. I almost every day when I walk in my office after lunch, I walk this area about 40 minutes. Very pleasant, walking area. You know the picture before. Very, very poor situation. Now we develop into this kind of area. So this is introduction, brief introduction of Korea. 60 years ago, after the war, and now we are in this kind of situation. So I want to go into main subject of the lecture today. Very, very many different subjects, but first two items, Korea's trade performance and Korea's trade relations with other countries, other main topic I want to talk about at the beginning of the lecture, which is our performance, trade performance. And then 3 and 4 or 5 is our trade policy. And the 6 and 7 is a more current world trade environment. Very briefly, trade disputes between U.S. and China. Okay, and then lastly, what is Korea's role, or what is Korea's commitment to respond to this kind of world trade environment. If you want to ask question, you can always raise your hand, even though I'm in the presentation, okay? Okay, first I want to show you Korea's trade performance. So it's even 2000, but we can go back to 1990s, 1980s. So we are doing trade and trade and trade because, you know, you don't produce very much in South Korea. We only have a people. So what you want to do? You have to earn foreign money to buy capital goods and advance your own economy. So we are really concentrating on international trade. I will come back to this, but in the 60s, I mean, we have a president, he really emphasized that we have to produce and export something. But we are so poor. So he suggests, as a government, why don't you export anything? And then if you show the evidence that you export something, then I'll give you a lot of benefits, tax, exemption, and you can give a loan, you can actually hold the dollars, many privileges you can give if you are exporting. So Korea started to export. Well, we capture some fishes and export to Japan, but that's not real export. First manufacturing export item in the 60s is, I don't know whether you heard this question. I mean, somebody may know that. What is the item we first export to United States? Anybody who can guess? What kind of things we make and produce and then export to the United States? Anybody? Well, actually, yes. Television. 1960s, we cannot make television. We are in a very poor situation. We are starting to export something. And yes.
I think women were selling their hair.
Yeah, so the wig, the hair.
Yeah.
That's right. I mean, we call wig, W-I-G. I mean, you can look at the dictionary. Wig means artificial hair. But at the time, Korean woman, your sister, your mother, your grandmother, they cut their hair and sell this to some small companies. Using this real hair, they make wigs and then sell it to United States. This is the first manufacturing item. So and then later, shoes and hats and clothing, and move on to today, color TV, smartphone, all kind of things. So anyway, Korean economic development is really led by international trade. Okay, so I will come back to this, how good we are right now. But anyway, these are the our performance. Look at this 2009. 2000, 2005, 2008, and before 2000 is all the way we are growing. 2009, we have a 20% cut of our trade. Do you know why this is happening? What happened to 2008 and 2009? Anybody who can guess what happened to the world economy? You don't know? You are not interested? 2008, yes. We have a huge global financial crisis which started in the United States. So whole world economy collapsed. Okay, so that's why in 2009 we have a 20% cut in our trade. Not only Korea, but world trade was reduced by 20%. And then, as far as Korea is concerned, we recover very well 2010, and then 2011. If you look at the number 1,000, that's the $1,000 billion. But we don't have any. We don't call 1,000 billion. After 100 billion, then we call trillion. Okay, so 1,000 means U.S. $1 trillion. So 2011, our total trade reached $1 trillion. And then stay several years until 2014. And then 2016 and 17, it actually fell down below $1 trillion. And then 2017, it recovered back to $1 trillion. What about this year? It's only from January to October, official statistics, but we are doing quite okay for this year too. It doesn't mean that world economy is in good condition, but Korea is doing trade pretty well given the world economic condition. Okay, so if I summarize Korea's trade performance, I told you in 2011, total trade reached over $1 trillion for the first time in history, okay, in Korea. That size of the trade is actually ninth largest trading nation in the world. Ninth. Do you know how many countries are really trading in the world? Any idea? What about, have you heard about World Trade Organization, WTO? Do you know how many members there? 164 members at the WTO. But in the world, almost 200 countries existing. But those kinds of countries who are trading very heavily is the member of the WTO. So we have 164, for example, trading nations in the world. Korea is ninth largest trading nation. So Korea is a small country in terms of population, everything, but we are doing quite okay. And if you look at only export performance, trade means export and import. If you combine export and import, Korea's trade is ninth largest nation in the world. But if you only look at export performance, Korea is sixth largest trading exporting country. So who are doing better? Maybe China, United States, and Japan, and Germany, and Netherlands. You know, Netherlands is a small country, but they are doing lots of export, lots of trade, lots of investment. Netherlands is very, very special country in the world, emphasizing globalization, all kinds of things. So Korea is number 6. Korea is doing better than, I don't want to really, I don't like to compare countries, but we are doing better than Italy, better than France, better than England. So in terms of export, we are number 6, which is doing very, very well. And I told you total trade remained over $1 trillion until 2014, but we fell down to below $1 trillion 2016 and 2015 and 16, and then come back over $1 trillion 2017. And I told you that the picture only covers this year from January and October, but I give more informal data. I found informal data from Korea International Trade Association. They said that in 2018 trade statistics, it's not the final statistics, but we already, as of November 16th, this month, our total trade is actually over $1 trillion. So this year we are doing quite okay. But I told you, world economy is in a very difficult situation, uncertain situation. So even though we are doing pretty good, I don't know whether next year how we will do, because world economy is in a kind of very difficult kind of situation. But anyway, as far as total trade is concerned, Korea is doing pretty good. 9th largest trading nation in the world, and also 6th largest exporting nation in the world. And this year, Korea is doing pretty okay too.